Hello, I am Andrea Sarmiento, and this is the first video that I'm going to do about the books that I'm reading. The first book that I want to present to you guys is Period Power from Maisie Hill. Here it is. Um, First of all, I want to give you a bit of an introduction of how did I arrive to this book. Um, this book I found it in the Vagina Museum here in London that we went to with our book club friends. I'm going to take this because it's reflecting a lot. We planned a visit to the Vagina Museum, and it like the major key takeaway of key takeaway of that visit was that most of us didn't know much about our own bodies and our own cycle and our vulva and how our body, our female body works. That was one of the main things that we learned there. And when I saw that they had a library and that they sell not only pins and shirts and like vulva stuff, um, of course they had a lot of books, and this one caught my attention basically because um, it it promised this idea that I was going to be able to understand my body based on this, which was something that I really wanted to do by then. All right, so going into the book itself, it was published in 2019 by Maisie Hill. I believe she lives here in London or in England at least. And she has three books. This one, I believe, is the first one. She also has let me show you guys the bookshelves. So she has Powerful, Period Power, and Perimenopause Power. Those are the three books that she has written. This is the only one that I have read, but I am very keen to um, read the other two because these literally gave me so much information to a level that I think this should be a mandatory read for every single woman. And I still don't understand why we don't get taught this when we're at school and when we get our period for the first time. Um, this is not going to be a big review. Is a very subjective from my point of view and what are my key takeaways. Because I also want to do these videos as a note video taker key takeaway of my own personal reading and inspiration. So let's get into the actual content. All right, so it is divided in three sections. The first one is called Get to Know Yourself, and this is basically like a biology class, which it was super helpful for me because I really didn't understand how our body works. This is literally what it has. It has pictures, it's super easy to go through and understand our own bodies, our reproductive system, how does it the whole thing interacts. So that is the first part, which I found it very, very useful. But it was also, and I have to say this, um, it was very impacting that I was having to learn this as on my 37th year. I am 37 years, and I can't believe at this point I have this level of ignorance regarding my own body. Um, of course, I have all the responsibility on it. I didn't pay attention. I didn't invest time or energy in knowing it, but it is very frustrating that when I am 37, I am learning that I didn't need to fill up my body with hormones, with chemical hormones to avoid an unwanted pregnancy, for example. Um, so it was like a sugar sweet chapter for me, this one, the section one, that is called again Get to Know Yourself. Then but the biggest and the thickest part of this book is the section two, which is the cycle strategy. So it has one, two, three, four, five sub chapters. So basically, what she does is that she used this very very clear language of the seasons. So she divides our period in the four different seasons. So we have, as women, we have a winter, we have a spring, we have a summer, and we have an autumn. I'm going to do a deep dive of on the ones that really opened my eyes. And then there is a fifth chapter that talks about changes. So basically, when you don't have your period and then you get it, or when you get pregnant, or when you're starting to transition into menopause. Um, I was specifically and very keen to understand how to go from an hormonal um, 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 T device that I used to have to learning my natural cycle. And this is very, 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 that was the actually like the decision that made me buy this book was because I saw a chart that clearly explained each hormonal or like any kind of how do you call this, the types of prevent uh, actually the key factor that made me buy this book was this table, which is basically um, it explains very clearly which are each of the contraception um, devices, hormones, medication, how how to navigate contraception um, with within every single type, all the methods, all the success rate, uh, how it works, what are the bronze, um, and all the contraception section is within these changes um, chapter that is within this big chapter that is called the cycle strategy, which is the second one. And then the third one is called Treat Yourself, and it basically gives you a lot of tips, methodologies, systems, and based on the new knowledge that you have, then it gives you how to navigate this whole thing within a self-care mentality, basically. All right, so just going into a bit of a summary or key takeaway of each of these big sections. The first one, as I said, is a bit of a biology class on what is the reproductive system of the female bodies, how do they work, what are the parts, etc. So it's very interesting to just go through it and read the whole thing and understand what are the parts of the reproductive system, what you can see, what you cannot see, what has been discovered lately, and basically learn about your body. If you are um, if you are inhabiting a female body biology, I think you should read this. If you have a cycle, you should read this. And you should read the whole first chapter just to understand how does that work. So first it talks about each of the parts. So it talks about the cervix, the ovaries, the vulva, the uterus, and like it literally explains what is the use of each of those organs, um, how where they are in your body, what is their function, etc., etc. And then she gives you like a hormones one-on-one class explaining what are the hormones that are released within our bodies and have um, a role within the menstrual cycle of women. So that is the first part, very very high level summarized. For me, again, it was very very interesting, but at the same time frustrating learning this now. I think I should have known this since I got my first period, pretty much. But this is my reality. I am learning this now, so at least now I know. The second section, as I mentioned, is called the cycle strategy, and it starts with a very 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 nice quote, which is, "At her first bleed, a woman meets her power. During her bleeding years, she practices it. At menopause, she becomes it." And this is from a Native American saying. That is, this is how it starts. So it's a very powerful start, and as I said, she basically divides our period in four sections that named her, name any of each of these sections as um, as a season. So we all start with winter, which is when we get our period, and then it starts evolving into spring, summer, autumn. It what basically what she explains is that there are different curves or different hormones that have a play and make this whole cycle ignite and happen. Um, and each woman is different, so you basically need to understand how does your cycle works. In my case, I believe I have a long spring, long summer, because I know that my winter is very short. It's just 3 days. um, she explained to you why you should track, what is the function of tracking, how you should tracking. I have to say that in this section I started to highlight a lot of things. But basically what she says is that tracking your cycle makes you understand your body, makes you understand yourself, especially because the hormones don't only play a role within what happens in your body, but also what happens in your mind and in your emotions. So, tracking your cycle as a woman is part of basically our self care routine. It's very useful to know ourselves. And in this full section of the cycle strategy, then she does like a double click in each of these seasons, as she calls it. And what is very, very, very helpful and is very practical, which I love, is the fact that she explains what happens in that part of the cycle. But most importantly, what she does is that she gives you the superpowers of that specific part of your period. So basically, she says this is what you can embrace from this part of the cycle, and you should focus in doing this. And please, there are some dangers as well. So these are the dangers, and these are the superpowers of each of the stages, or each of the seasons or of our cycle. So for example, she starts with winter. This is where your when your period cycle starts. So the superpowers of winter, for example, are set boundaries, nourishing, rest, release, receive. And the winter dangers, what she says is carrying on without awareness, ignoring the call to retreat. This is what she mentions, is that winter is normally when we want to be alone, we want to think, we don't want a lot of like social interaction, um, and yeah, in general we just want to retreat, and the danger is just ignoring that. There is a lot of there could be a lot of guilt and just rushing, like in this whole mental state that we're all are, at least here in London, that we're just rushing, rushing, rushing to do everything. And then based on that, um, she has some recommendations. So, for example, in winter, she recommends to make rest radical. You need to make sure that in this season of your period, you give yourself time to rest. Um, so that is, I have a lot of like highlight um, sections in like paragraphs in this whole book. Um, Within winter, there is one like there is also a very good deep dive into the politics of period, um, period poverty, and how that in in some countries, in some vulnerable um, places and people, having a period really impacts women's life, and that some states do not support a natural view of period. And she explains there is a lot of politics around this. So it's very, very interesting just to understand what is the situation of women that are not receiving or having resources to take good care of themselves when they are on their winter, basically. It's also very cute that the book has like these little images of a tree. So in winter, the tree has no leaves, for example. So it's a very cute book. After winter comes springs, of course, and this is where she says, "Let's get this party started." So basically, is when um, estrogen goes up, starts to goes up. Um, so is the season where we um, want to be social, we want to go out, we want to see people. Within the spring superpowers, what she says is there is potential, there is build and expand, be curious and explore and play. And the spring dangers are exposing yourself, succumbing to pressure and tiredness and destruction. And again, she gives you a lot of like information on how to handle this specific phase or season of your period. Then comes the summer, and she says, "Don't like." She calls this part "Don't Stop Me Now," and it's basically when we are very flirtatious. Basically, our body is telling us to go out there and find a mate. So the summer superpowers are invincibility. We feel invincible, and I think most of us women have felt that boost where we literally feel like we can do anything we want. Is very productive. That is one of the superpowers as well. Expansion, expansion, and connection and communication. I highlighted this like not this one a lot. The whole thing because basically is where we mostly need human contact. We being with friends, being with our boyfriends or whoever we're dating. Like this is the moment that we really want and need this. Um, Pleasure, of course, is one of the superpowers. And then, of course, there is also summer dangers, which are feeling too visible, exposing yourself, feeling like you're exposing yourself too much, saying yes to everything because you have this energy where you want to do everything and say yes to everything. Getting giddy, um, and wasting opportunities. You, what she says is that we normally tend to stretch ourselves too much in this season. So again, she gives you some advice on how to navigate this season, not go too far, make sure that you're taking care of yourself. Also in terms of like working or in my writing, what she says like this is the moment to create things from scratch. This is where you have plenty of ideas, skills, and talents, and like everything flourishes here. So, this is the moment to start a new chapter of the book that you're reading, writing, or like just to create from scratch. Um, there is a lot of pleasure, of course, since your body is asking you to find the mate. It talks a lot about sexuality and pleasure and how to really enjoy yourself in this part of your cycle. Um, and I believe that's that's pretty much it. Finally, it comes the autumn, and I think was this was one of the most revealing sections for me. Um, she calls it Highway to Hell, and I think the quote where how she starts this part is very clear. She says, "What may not look like on the surface to be uncontrolled anger, destruction, and rage may actually be truth, justice, and love." And I think this was very revealing for me personally because rage uh, is one of the emotions that I have a lot in my family. Not only me, like um, there's a lot of rage in my family, and we know this. Um, and normally, rage has been something that, especially for women, or especially I have felt it as well. I need to tame. Like it's something that I shouldn't be saying, showing, delivering, um, using. It was always such an inconvenience to have rage. And it's very beautiful how she explains why we have rage and why we need to pay attention. Of course, using that rage to do good to yourself and to others. Um, but there is a reason why rage comes with such a powerful energy. And it's basically because in this stage and hormonally, your body wants you to have rage or like just to set boundaries, just to make sure that you're safe. Um, so it was very revealing for me because it gave me tools and understanding of why do I sometimes feel how I feel and feel so much rage, and also not disregarding that but actually taking that information, understanding where do I feel that I need to draw limits and boundaries and making sure that I am taking care of myself based on that emotion and based on that thing that my body is clearly showing me. So she talks about of the autumn's superpowers as deep thought and focus. In writing, for example, for me, she said like this is the moment to edit the text. This is the moment where your brain is focused to see the errors and just like clean and make sure that everything's correct. So this doesn't only help you to understand your body, your cycle, but how you can use that as a power in order for you to be more productive, to deliver more stuff, to go with the flow of your own body and your own mind and your own hormones. Um, Reviewing, deciding, editing, and organizing, speaking kindly. Um, and then the autumn's dangers are pain and catastrophe, of course, when there is a lot of rage that is not managed well, um, and with kindness within yourself of others, there is a danger to cause a lot of pain, of course. Choking out the baby with the bathwater. This is what she said. Um, but yeah, basically, just take care of yourself and others when you are in this phase of your cycle. Truth talking. You want to be honest, but you want to be kind as well. Overloading your schedule in this process, and also hating yourself. Like you not only are looking for errors out, but most likely you will look for errors within. So kindness is a big word in this part of the cycle, and it was actually very useful to just understand how my mind and body are working and understand how to navigate this as well. For me, I believe this was, as you can see, one of the sections that gave me much more information about myself and how I navigate my body and my hormones and my rage. So it was very, very useful. Then, as I mentioned, within this second big section, there is a part called changes. We talk about the changes that we go through within our lives, but the piece that I wanted to really understand was basically birth control and contraception. Um, because my personal life, I've been living in London for 3 years. 2 out of those 3 years, I was using the Mirena T contraceptive device, and it lowered, completely killed my libido, basically. That's why I took it out, and that's why I wanted to clearly understand how does this work and what are the other methods and how to understand my own body, my own period, and how can I manage and control um, contraception in my life, and like making sure that I am doing the correct thing for myself and for um, my body and my decisions and my life. And she literally, as I said, she has a chart that tells you exactly um, what are the different birth control methods, what are the systems, what are the brands, how they work, if they have hormones or not, if what is the typical success rate of each of them. And it's so detailed, and it was very, 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 very useful. And I read this book like 2 months ago, but I still open it up and look for it and try to just check for information and make sure um, that I know what I'm doing. And of course, it also goes through perimenopause and menopause and all these changes when we start losing our period. I'll be there in some time, so it is going to be very useful. As well as, so I did read it. Um, so yeah, third part and final part of the book is called Treat Yourself, and basically she does a bit of a zoom out, and she not only talks about the cycle but your overall health care and like how to treat yourself within having this new information into mind. So what to eat, how you can better nourish your body in order to like based on each of the seasons. Um, she does a really good explanation of the different bacteria, viruses, an explanation of any reproductive disease. There is like a big section with that within the self care part, and how to make sure that you're right and you're treating yourself and making sure that you are healthy. And then, all right, so final thoughts of Period Powered by Maisie Hill. I really enjoyed it, really enjoyed it. It's a non-fiction book, and is, I would call it as a heavy reading book. Um, so I wasn't able to read it on a one go. Is, I believe, is one of those books that you need to read with another fictional book that you can switch. Sometimes you just don't want to read about biology and hormones and how the body works. Um, so I read it like in the course of like 3 months, switching it and going back and forth, having a fictional reading on the side. Um, but I do recommend it. I think every woman should read it, and every woman should know about this knowledge of our body, our cycle, our reproductive system, and how to work with it and make sure that we take the best out of it and just don't fight with it. And that's it of this book. Really enjoyed it. Really, very much recommend it. So please, if you have access to it, go. If you're a woman, please go get it and make sure that you read it and you understand your body, your reproductive system, your cycle. I am sure it's going to give you lots of useful information.